meet us in the back row.
I talked about how I have this wonderment, but Corey, that singer I was telling you about from Red Rocks, he pointed out, he used the word awe.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I have that, and I do. But when it comes to stuff like this, I don't. So when you said God chose us, to me, I would go, this is the bullshit mess I've made. How can God help me make the best out of it? Instead of what you said inspires so much more awe, which is God saw our trauma, knew that we had this skill that we could be the only ones to put up with that. The example Corey gave me was on this podcast. I talked about my church, Red Rocks, and I said this to him where I go, man, thank God I walked into that church because they spoke my language. They were humble. They had humility, all this stuff. And he goes, yeah. Or if you look at it with a little more awe, God put you in that church because they spoke your language. And he talked about like there were people that would not have responded to anyone but Paul. And Paul came along and he goes, hey man, I see you're, worshiping these idols. Like, what if I just like tell you about like this like other way? And like those were guys who were like, man, I didn't think I was a church guy, but Paul gets me.
Yeah.
And it's like, I didn't think I was a church girl, but Jen gets me. And so even back then, there were people who were like, thank God I showed up at this temple. And not that, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and Paul persecuted Christians. He killed one of the first Christian martyrs. I mean, he had a rough, he murdered someone. Like he had a rough background.
His Google search, not fun.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly.
Puts us both to shame.
And God was like, you are exactly the voice that I need to reach these people.
Right. And then, but then the next part, by the way, that would have been, if I was more of a pro, the line to end on because it was so good. But just this question is just going to kill me. When do you also keep yourself in check, not just with the fame and success, but there are times where my girlfriend just goes, your voice is going to be so important to get people to God. When does that drift over to fucking psycho ego? You know what I mean? Where it's like, I think that the good thing about me is I know that it's because I talk about what a mess I am. And so my God-given gift is that sort of vulnerability, making people feel less broken. It's not like it's like, oh, I'm just so hot, people are going to want to be Christians. It's like, no, I'm a hot mess. I'm a mess. But, this probably happens to some of these like mega church people, right? It's like you start off with these intentions of, I want to help bring people to God and happiness and love. But then there's a mission creep there too, that it can go into like, oh, what? I think I'm fucking important enough that I'm a voice for God. That's insane. Like, how do you battle that?
I think the key there is what a nun said to me one time. She's like, you got to stop thinking about yourself so much. I mean, even asking questions of like, is that egomaniacal to say I'm a voice for God? Who are you thinking about? There's a homeless man who needs a sandwich right outside your door while you're pontificating on, but am I a true, it's like just the, when you look at the greats of history who just did that humble, great Christian work, they just kind of did their thing. They did what they felt moved to do. And they just didn't worry about it. They kind of laughed at themselves like, I'm probably the worst voice for God, honestly. Like I am probably...
That's me and you all the time.
I'm probably the worst.
Yeah.
But this feels like the right thing to do, so I'm going to do it. And again, connecting to prayers like the St. Francis prayer, like the Litany of Humility. Like in the Litany of Humility, which I say all the time, it's like, let others get the acclaim today. Yeah. Let others get the fame. Let others be loved. And just detaching yourself from the results, I think that's how you stay sane. I'm going to do what feels, let me put it this way. You say, I am going to love the world today in the way that I feel called to love the world. So that could be a silly sketch or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm going to turn the results over to God.
Yeah.
And it is when we get obsessive about results that we can go off the rails. We're like, but where is the Lexus? Where are my 10 million views? When you just say, I am going to love the world to the absolute max and know that I will do it imperfectly. Yeah. A lot of times I'm not going to get it right all the time, but I'm just going to have a habit of love the world in the unique way that I feel called to love the world today and leave the results totally up to God. That's the key.
And ironically, that's where I've had the most success.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And I think that people who aren't in our situation, you can do that with your life.
Yeah.
You can do that with your relationship. You can do that. You can also know that sometimes it's your flaws that will save people.
Yeah.
It's being open about it. To a friend, it's not just trying to put your best self on fucking Instagram. It's like being open about all your stuff. We really appreciate you guys. We want to give back to you like you give to us. Be part of the family, the Ohana, the group chat. Sign up for the newsletter, and we'll see you in the back row.